Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Councillor Diane Donaldson, and I'll be chairing this hearing of the Subcommittee A of the Licensing and Public Protection Committee of Birmingham City Council. Before we start, can you all please mute your microphones for the moment in order to improve the sound quality? Whilst I outline the procedure, can you also please turn off your cameras with the exception of committee members unless you're the person speaking. This is to reduce bandwidth. Committee members will have their cameras switched on throughout the hearing. So Councillor Leddy, Councillor Sharp, yes, you've got your cameras on. Could everyone attending today's meeting please put their mobile phones on silent and ensure they are situated in a room or environment which is free from distractions or any unnecessary noise emanating from radios, TVs, etc. Thank you for that. I'm speaking slowly and clearly so everyone can follow. It's vitally important, for what I hope are obvious reasons, that those attending the meeting and making representations are able to hear me and members of my subcommittee and officers. Any distractions brought to my attention could result in the meeting being suspended temporarily or another date and time under the regulations for these types of meetings. I also confirm this is a public meeting and therefore is being live streamed for the City Council's website in order that the general public can view it. So this meeting is being webcast for live or subsequent broadcast by the Council's meeting YouTube site. We can put the link into the chat. And that members of the press public may record and take photographs except where there are confidential or exempt items. Members are reminded that they must declare all relevant pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests arising from any business to be discussed at this meeting. If a disclosable pecuniary interest is declared by a member must not speak or take part in that agenda item. Any declarations will be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. Apologies were submitted on behalf of Councillor Davis, Councillor Beauchamp and Councillor Straker-Wells, and the nominated substitute members were myself, Councillor Donaldson, Sharp and Leddy. To confirm and sign the meetings, so can we confirm and sign the meetings of the minutes of the meeting held on the 29th of July 2021?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. That's agreed. And can I welcome to this hearing an application for the expedited review in respect of a licence for Parvo Birmingham, formerly Latin Parvo Bar and Restaurant, 88 to 90 Victoria Street, Jewellery Quarter, B1 3PA. I'll begin with some introductions. My name is Councillor Diane Donaldson and I am chairing this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee. With me, other members of the subcommittee, Councillors Mike Sharp and Councillor Mike Leddy. Also present in this meeting are the following officers. Licensing Officer David Kennedy.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning. Committee Manager Katie Townsend.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning. Committee Lawyer Joanne Swampillai.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning. Could I ask all parties to identify themselves, please? Firstly, the applicant, West Midlands Police, Mr. Mark Swallow, Police Licensing Officer, Civilian.
Mark Swallow, Police Licensing Officer. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And next, the licence holder and their representative. So we've got Heath Thomas, Solicitor, and Edo Adeko, Director, DPS.
Yes, good morning, Ma'am. I'm Heath Thomas. I'm the solicitor for the premises licence holder. With me this morning is Mr. Adeko and also Mr. Dunkley, who is from More Secure Limited.
Thank you. And at this point, can I ask if any personal persons making representations wishes to withdraw their representations at this stage of the hearing?
No, Chair.
Thank you. Right, well, I'll assume that all parties have read and understood the Licensing Committee's procedural rules sent out with the notice of today's hearing. Please note that given the nature of today's proceedings, I may at my discretion amend the procedural rules to reflect the fact that this meeting is taking place online, but wish to assure you that such amendments will not impact on the party's right to a fair hearing. We'll be using the chat function in Microsoft Teams to communicate. One of the icons on your toolbar is a speech bubble. Click the speech bubble to go into chat. If you do not have access to the chat function for any reason, please use the raise a hand function to indicate you wish to speak. That button is usually fourth from the right on the toolbar. You can also, of course, indicate that you wish to speak at the appropriate time. Can you all confirm that you have access to the chat facility by typing your own name now? Officers will also type their job title. The meeting will not proceed until you all have done so. Yeah, I think everybody's responded now.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Please keep this chat column open for the entire duration of the meeting in order that everyone can follow the messages being posted in the chat. If any participant has dialed in on audio telephone rather than Microsoft Teams, please speak now to confirm that you can hear and be heard. I don't think we have anyone dialing in today. With the exception of subcommittee members, please keep your camera off unless you are the person speaking. If there are any problems with bandwidth which could cause difficulties with the sound, I may, in my discretion, ask everyone to turn their camera off in order that the meeting can proceed with everyone able to hear and be heard. Does anyone wish to make any preliminary points at this stage? If so, please indicate that you wish to raise a point by typing speak into the chat function or use the raise a hand function now. No, okay.
Sorry, Chair. I believe West Midlands Police may have a preliminary point. I think they have got CCTV footage that they wish to screen, but they may be seeking to have that screened in private if the police could confirm that and make that application to the committee.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I do have CCTV of the incident. Obviously, that's a live police inquiry as we sit, where a potential person is going to be interviewed in relation to the offence, and I would therefore request that that is viewed in private, please.
Okay, so we'll move into private session to view the footage.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Swallow. So we okay to move into private session to view the footage?
Chair, I think when Mr. Swallow is presenting his evidence, if he gives an indication to members as to when he wants to screen that, and then we'll move into private then, Chair. Thank you.
That's fine, thank you.
Yes, that would be fine. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right. I'll briefly outline the procedure which will be following at today's hearing. Firstly, the licensing officer, David Kennedy, will present the report. Then the applicant will be asked to present their case. We're asking if this could be kept to approximately 20 minutes. Then the licence holder and their representatives will be invited to make their case again. Approximately 20 minutes will be allowed for this part of the hearing. Can I ask all parties to speak as slowly and as clearly as they possibly can, because the officers are taking notes by hand for the minutes. And the meeting is also being live streamed on the City Council's website. If at any time somebody else's turn to speak, please mute your microphone and use the chat function to communicate if necessary. Please know that members of the subcommittee will be able to ask questions at any stage, but will try to do so at the conclusion of each presentation. Cross-examination by the applicant and those making representations will not be permitted unless the members consider it appropriate. Where questions are raised by the members of the subcommittee or those present, they must signify this by using the chat facility set out on the right-hand side of the screen you're viewing this meeting on. The meeting manager will alert me if I did not notice messages in the chat. I will determine verbally or in writing on the chat facility the order in which questions are dealt with. So if at any point of the meeting you wish to speak, please type the word "speak" into the chat function, and the meeting manager will ensure that you come to an appropriate moment. If at any point you cannot hear or are having problems with your internet connection, please use the chat facility to alert the meeting manager. The chair will then ask the person speaking to repeat what they just said. It is therefore important that you use a chat function as soon as you're unable to hear the person speaking. It may well be that the problem is caused by people still having their microphones or cameras on, which creates interference. So I will remind everyone to please mute your microphones and turn off your cameras when you are not the person speaking. Could I point out that occasionally it may be necessary for the subcommittee to take legal advice. At my discretion, I may ask all parties to wait in this meeting whilst members and the relevant officers withdraw to take legal advice using a separate meeting within Microsoft Teams. We'll then return to this meeting and continue. Please note, if at any time the live stream being broadcast on the City Council's website fails, I will ask you to mute your microphones and cameras and to stop speaking until the live stream is restored. If at any time this meeting goes into private session, the meeting manager will pause the live stream. Once the private part of the meeting is over, I will ask the meeting manager to confirm that the live stream has resumed before we continue. At the conclusion of the hearing, I will invite all parties to make a brief closing submission. Can I stress no decision will be taken until all evidence has been heard. At the decision-making stage, the members and the relevant officers will withdraw from this meeting in order to determine the decision. They will go into a separate Microsoft Teams meeting. In the event that the meeting needs to clarify any point, you will be telephoned by the meeting manager. The members will then make their decision. You'll be notified of the decision of the subcommittee within the statutory time limits. I hope that's reasonably straightforward. So with that, can I ask the licensing officer, David Kennedy, to present the report, please, as slowly, as clearly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. On the 28th of July 2021, Chief Superintendent Fisher applied for a review under Section 53A of the Licensing Act 2003 as amended of the premises licence granted to Swan Taverns Limited in respect of Parvo Birmingham, formerly known as Latin Parvo Bar and Restaurant, 88 to 90 Victoria Street, Birmingham, B1, 3PA. The application was accompanied by the required certificate, which is attached to Appendix 1. Within 48 hours of receipt of such an application, the licensing authority is required to consider whether it is appropriate to take interim steps pending determination of the review of the licence. Licensing Subcommittee A met on the 29th of July to consider whether to take any interim steps, and having heard from both West Midlands Police and the licence holder's legal representative, the subcommittee resolved to remove Mr Adeko as a designated premises supervisor and to suspend the premises licence pending today's review hearing. A copy of the decision is attached to Appendix 2. The review application was advertised by the licensing authority in accordance with the regulations. No additional representations have been received. A copy of the current premises licence is attached to Appendix 3 and site location plans are at Appendix 4. West Midlands Police have submitted CCTV footage from an adjacent building which they wish to rely upon at the hearing. The premises licence holder's legal representative has submitted supporting documents which have been disclosed to all parties in advance of the hearing. When carrying out its licensing functions, a licensing authority must have regard to Birmingham City Council's statement of licensing policy and the guidance issued by the Secretary of State under Section 182 of the Act. The authority's functions under the Act are to promote the four licensing objectives. The options available to the committee today are to modify the conditions of licence, exclude a licensable activity from the scope of the licence, remove the designated premises supervisor, suspend the licence for a period not exceeding 3 months, revoke the licence or take no action. In addition, the subcommittee will need to decide what action, if any, should be taken regarding the interim steps imposed on the 29th of July. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr Swallow.
Good morning, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, so,
Yeah.
yes, I can hear you.
Thank you very much. Parvo Birmingham is located at 88 to 90 Victoria Street in the Jewellery Quarter. It is a bar and restaurant which between Thursday and Sunday each week is allowed to carry out licensable activity between 0800 and 0400 hours, and on other days of the week that is reduced to 0200 hours. Premises operates a number of operating conditions, some of these being to risk assess the need for door supervisors. If door supervisors are used, for them to be wearing fluorescent jackets and be on duty over the weekend period from 2100 hours or when the club opens if it is later than that. The premises has to maintain an incident book and it has to have operational CCTV which is recording whilst licensable activity is taking place. The premises were carrying out licensable activity on the evening of Friday, the 25th of June 2021, going into the morning of Saturday, the 26th of June 2021. There was 4 door staff on duty who booked on at 2200 hours, which was when the premises opened. At approximately 0400 hours, 3 males were outside the premises and were in conversation with a member of door staff from there. The member of door staff, after a short while, entered the premises and then came out carrying what appears to be a machete. The member of door staff attacks the 3 males with the machete, causing 2 of them cuts to their hands. The third male received a 2 to 3 inch gash to his forehead. The male was later helped over the road and was treated by his friends. The matter was then reported to the police and the victims had to attend hospital to have their injuries treated. I later attended the premises and spoke with the designated premises supervisor, Ido Adeko. He stated that the CCTV system was broken when asked for it. He did provide a list of door staff on duty at the club that night and agreed to get an engineer to download the footage. The footage has not been provided and an engineer has stated that the system was faulty at the time of the incident. Other CCTV footage of the incident has been obtained from another premises in the locality from inquiries made. The description of the person that has committed the offence has been read out to Mr. Adeko, who has identified one of the door staff on duty that night as matching that description. Inquiries are ongoing for that person to be interviewed in relation to that matter. There is no incident log for these events. The CCTV system, which is there to protect staff and customers, was not working. Door staff who were mandated to wear fluorescent jackets did not do so. Door staff are there for the protection of the customers. In this case, it's the door staff that actually are the people who made this vicious and unprovoked attack on the victims after obtaining a weapon that was situated in the premises. The premises have failed to promote the licensing objectives, follow their operating conditions, and have failed to provide a safe environment for customers. West Midlands Police are concerned at those management failings that they've contributed to these assaults taking place. At this point, Chair, I would like to share the CCTV footage with yourselves.
Yes, so we'd like to see the CCTV footage, so we'll
Yes,
move
Chair. So I'll need to send an invitation to a separate private meeting. So if you just give me a few moments to do that.
Okay, we'll wait, and then when you're ready, we'll move over into the private session.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. we're all here.
Via his solicitor, Mr. Thomas. That was received on Friday. There is no agreed position between West Midlands Police and Mr. Adiko. However, I think it's only appropriate that I should perhaps comment on some of the things that have been put forward. So firstly, Mr. Adiko has sacked Rhino Guard Security and is in the process of appointing More Secure Limited. Although West Midlands Police do not give a recommendation in regard to security companies, I can say that More Secure Limited are a well-established and well-respected firm that operate premises across Birmingham and have operated very well over a number of years. They're offering to do a venue risk assessment, which West Midlands Police would welcome. They're also suggesting that CCTV should be checked to make sure it's operational at all times. And I would say that that is very welcome and reassuring. And I would suggest that it should be checked prior to the licensable activity each day and then be recorded in the incident log as to the identity of the person, the time and the condition of the system. Another thing that's suggested was that the venue should invest in body cams. I would welcome that as a reassurance. The appointment of a head doorman, where their role would be to communicate with the manager and security and act as a conduit, and that would be welcome and reassuring. And have a search policy and a dress code policy. I would also wish to see a dispersal policy. These issues have taken place as the premises is closing, and the dispersal of persons, as you've seen, doesn't appear to be very well managed. Mr. Adiko has offered to have himself replaced as a designated premises supervisor. West Midlands Police would welcome this. Mr. Adiko is the premises licence holder, although it's in Swan Taverns. Swan Taverns is Mr. Adiko, and Mr. Adiko is Swan Taverns. So a further person in that managerial chain would be welcome, because it would firstly reduce some of the issues that Mr. Adiko has to manage. There'll be two people to manage them instead. And secondly, it would be somebody to provide advice and help with what's going on. Obviously, with More Secure Limited, if they were to be appointed, obviously that could change. There could be a change of contracts, and there may be a wish to change to other security in the future. West Midlands Police would ask that they would be consulted if that were to be the case. And the last thing I would say is that it's well known that issues of threat and harm exponentially increase after midnight. These issues, and we've seen two here on this one evening, one where the member of staff comes out with the weapon, and secondly where there's an argument that gets out of hand that has to be intervened in, that these issues occurring at 4 o'clock are perhaps something that the club cannot cope with. And so therefore, I would ask for a further thing, that the hour for the end of licensable activity is reduced to 2 o'clock on Thursday, Friday and Saturday to coincide with the rest of the week, where there isn't the same exponential risk of problems occurring. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Swallow.
Sorry, Chair. It seemed to be breaking up a little bit at the end. Would Mr. Swallow just like to repeat that last sentence about the hour of licensable activity being reduced, please?
Yes, certainly. Sorry about that. I'm asking that from Thursday to Saturday, the hour of finishing licensable activity is reduced to 0200 hours, where there's less risk, as obviously the issues that we've seen occurred at 0400 hours, where exponentially there are more risks and problems occurring.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we all heard that. Did everybody hear that?
Yes, thank you, Ma'am. It's Heath Thomas, I heard it.
Thank you.
Yes, Chair.
Okay, excellent. So can we move on to the applicant presentation?
Sorry, Chair. Are there any members' questions to the police?
No,
Not from me, Chair.
No, thank you.
Ma'am, it's Heath Thomas. If you're ready to move on to me, the officer has mentioned some comments of which I'd like to have 5 minutes just to take instructions from my client. Would the committee be prepared to allow me a short moment of time just to take some instructions?
Certainly. That's fine.
What time would you like to reconvene then, Ma'am?
Is 5 minutes sufficient?
Shall we err on the side of caution and say 10?
10 minutes? Okay. So we'll resume. It's now 10:45, so we'll resume at 10:55.
Thank you, Ma'am.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, everyone. Welcome back to the Licensing Subcommittee A. Live stream has resumed. So can we ask the applicants to make their presentation?
Thank you, Ma'am. I did lodge some additional information on behalf of my client, which I understand you've got before you. Just before I start properly, you'll notice in that documentation that I refer to the incident, and there are certain comments contained within the witness statement of Mr. Adiko. Now, at the very outset, Officer Swallow clearly made a request for parts of his presentation to be held in camera. There is an ongoing police investigation. Some of the comments that I make clearly are relevant to that ongoing police investigation. And I'm wondering if whether you've had a look, or whether your committee lawyer has had a look, whether or not you have a view as to then what I'm going to be saying ought to be held in camera as well, just to maintain that in terms of the police investigation which is ongoing.
Thank you. Committee members, have you any?
Sorry, Chair, it was breaking up a bit. I didn't quite get that.
Okay, could we ask the representative to repeat?
Yes, ma'am. What I was saying was this, is that I provided some additional material to you. That material is pertinent to the ongoing police investigation. My concern is I don't wish to jeopardise an ongoing police investigation. And on that basis, should the comments that I make be held in camera, such that I'll be making reference to the witness statement, for example, that you got before you, which is a private document that otherwise hasn't been disclosed.
If it's pertinent to the case, I think it should be made public.
Well, pertinent to the criminal investigation, ma'am, not to the licensing hearing. That was the point about it being held in camera. I'm completely in your hands on that. I don't know whether West Midlands Police have any view, or indeed your committee lawyer. As I say, I'm be guided by what you wish me to do.
Chair, shall we hear from Mr. Swallow with his views, please?
Yes, absolutely. In relation to the issues that Mr. Thomas is referring, yeah, I would have no issues in parts that he is going to bring up that are pertinent to the investigation being held in private. Obviously, we wouldn't wish to prejudice the CCTV to be in private. I would suggest that it isn't going to all be in private, because some of this isn't going to be pertinent to that investigation, but the parts that are should be held in private in the interests of the person who's potentially accused of a crime, and secondly in the interest of the victims.
Thank you.
Perhaps, ma'am, if I suggest this way forward, and for you to indicate whether you agree or not, I want to run through Mr. Adiko's witness statement with you. Maybe that's the element that ought to be in camera. And then once I've finished with that, and I want to run on to what More Secure Limited have indicated in their submissions, then I can resume public session.
I'm happy with that. Is the lawyer, the committee lawyer, happy with that?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so if you'd like to resume the presentation, that would be fine. The public part.
Well, Mum, what I would like to do then at this stage is take you through Mr. Adiko's evidence, and so if I could do that in private session then please, and then once I finish that we can then come back into public session.
Fine. Okay, so we'll resume into private session. So if the live stream can be paused, and we'll meet in the private meeting. Subcommittee A. We'll resume the meeting now, and if the live stream has resumed, so if the applicant presentation, if Mr. Thomas would like to resume the public part.
Thank you, Mom. So in terms of the activity that night, then Mr. Adiko had his radio, had been patrolling within the premises, had on occasion been to the front door, as you'll note from his witness statement. At no time did he receive any either radio communication or verbal face-to-face communication from any member of the security personnel to suggest that there was an incident taking place at the premises. In fact, actually, the security personnel who provided the incident book that's there at the premises to record those incidents make no record of the incident in their incident book either. And so prior to Mark Swallow's engagement, Mr. Adiko was not aware of the seriousness at all of an incident that had taken place outside his premises. In terms of his CCTV, you'll have before you a report from Ford Electrical Contractors who they were the ones that installed the CCTV. It had been working and tested and operated before the 25th of June. And as I said to you at the start, this is a continuously recording CCTV system with movement sensors. You'll see their report there. After numerous attempts, then that hard drive was not functioning properly and it had to be replaced. The hard drive was provided to West Midlands Police to see if they could then retrieve any footage from that hard drive as well. So again, demonstrating my client's commitment to try and work with West Midlands Police in terms of their investigation. That computer system has been completely changed, and you'll notice from my client's witness statement that what he says at paragraph 19, to the untrained eye, it certainly appeared that the CCTV was recording when in fact it was not. Having become aware of those problems, he actually has had that completely rectified. He now has a status register which has a daily log with it that confirms the status before any licensable activity would be allowed to take place at the premises. You'll see that paragraph 19 of the witness statement and paragraph 20 to confirming resolution of the technical issues that are there. Now, in terms of the way forward for my client recognises that whilst he possesses the qualifications to be a designated premises supervisor, he openly accepts that a more qualified and experienced designated premises supervisor would be somebody who could assist him in the management and operation of his premises. I'm grateful to West Midlands Police that they agree that that's a sensible way forward for Latin Parvo if it were able to retain its licence going forward. My client is in the course of recruiting an experienced designated premises supervisor, and actually, if he is personally removed as a designated premises supervisor, the committee will be aware that no licensable activity can take place at the premises for sale of alcohol without a designated premises supervisor being in place. It essentially means the premises cannot operate until such time as that new person is appointed. In terms of the security provision, again, I'm equally grateful to Mark Swallow. Now, my client went upon the recommendation and met Rhino Security Group, and as I say, ostensibly they appear to have all of the qualifications to help him run his premises. My client has since withdrawn from any contractual agreement with them and actually has appointed More Secure Limited. Mr. Dunkley from More Secure Limited is in fact in the meeting with me, and you'll see him around the table. So if you have any questions of him, then you'll know that he's here and he's participating in the meeting. I'm grateful to Mark Swallow also for indicating that More Secure Limited, whilst West Midlands Police any security provider, they openly accept that this is an experienced provider within the city who's demonstrated their ability to effectively work with premises licence holders in managing the late night economy in the city. And so they are content that in terms of appointing More Secure Limited, that we have a credible partner with which to work and deliver in terms of promoting the licensing objectives. In terms of body cams, you'll see that's a matter that's been volunteered by us and put to you in the committee as a double protection measure there, that we would have CCTV and body cam in place for door supervisors. And again, I'm grateful to West Midlands Police for acknowledging that would be of assistance, as would a head doorman, a search and dress code policy. Officer Swallow mentions a dispersal policy, and when you allowed me time to take instructions from my clients, absolutely, that is something that we would openly engage in and have that risk assessment and dispersal policy in place, and that we would share that dispersal policy and risk assessment with West Midlands Police before any licensable activities were able to resume at these premises. Finally, Ma'am, the West Midlands Police did suggest that we consider curtailing the hours for licensable activity at the premises. I've not had opportunity, I'm afraid, to speak with West Midlands Police direct in the short intervening period, but I have had opportunity to take instructions from Mr. Adiko. And what Mr. Adiko would propose is this. Rather than ending licensable activities at 0200 hours, to have a last entry time at 0200 hours, and the premises to close at 0300 hours, which is 1 hour later. Ma'am, of course, that isn't a matter for you in the committee, but in taking instructions from my client, hopefully you will see how my client has sought to work with West Midlands Police. In terms of management here, Ma'am, this is an individual premises licence holder who has been woefully let down by the security company he engaged here. There is no evidence to either support or condone any of the activities that took place there, and my client finds their behaviour to be reprehensible and one that could never have been conceived on that night. So, Ma'am, in terms of those measures, my client is asking that we modify the licence. He's content, as I say, to have a more experienced DPS appointed, that we have those additional policies, a search and a dress code, share our risk assessment with West Midlands Police and our dispersal policy. And I put it to you as a compromise position in terms of, rather than reducing license activities to 2 a.m. At that weekends, that we reduce it to 3 a.m. with a last entry at 2 a.m. I need to ask my client, actually, and indeed Mr. Dunkley, who's with me, whether or not there's anything I've missed to say to you in my submissions. Do you mind if I just ask that question of my client?
No, go ahead.
My clients have indicated to me that there is nothing else they would like me to add in terms of that. Hopefully, I've covered the pertinent points for you and your colleagues, and I'm very happily, together with my clients and Mr. Dunkley, answer any questions that the committee may have of us.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Committee members, are there any questions that you'd like to ask?
Yes, Chair.
Yes. Councillor Leddy, will you?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Adeko, can you indicate to us what experience you have of running a late night venue?
Training. You're on speaker.
This is the first time I'm running a late night venue. To be honest with you, I've run other businesses. I've actually gone for the training. I hold a personal license, but as it's well known now, this is the first time I've actually run a late night venue. And like I've said earlier, I'm very willing to step aside so that a more experienced person can take charge of the venue for the day-to-day running of the business.
Thank you, Mr. Adeko.
Thank you. In addition, you are aware that even if we accept the offer of removing you as the DPS and you employing someone in that role, the actual management of the premises still falls well and truly onto your shoulders. Do you fully accept that?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Now, you've brought to us a number of failings. Failing number one was obviously with the security company that you engaged. But failing number two is also the CCTV system. You engaged a company to come and try and retrieve some video. Is that the same company that installed the CCTV system on your premises?
Yes, it is. And in terms of the CCTV system, we know that the CCTV was working immediately before this incident, and it had been checked and tested by the operator. We don't know the reason for the failure, and we can only assume that either it is a malfunction or it is a deliberate attempt by those that may have perpetrated the original serious offending who equally had access to this equipment. And as I said to you, a piece of equipment was missing. And so what have we done to ensure that this could never be a repeat? One is to ensure, my clients put this in place, this isn't my recommendation, to ensure that before any session would allow to start, that the CCTV status is checked. That means the ability to play and replay the CCTV so you know that it is working and you know that it is recording. The second thing is that the CCTV hard drive area shall be in a locked area where there will be no access to any persons who otherwise would not form part of the management of the premises. That would prevent any future risk of tampering with the CCTV equipment, which we believe may have happened in this particular case. And in terms of that, my client said that there was any failures of the CCTV system would be immediately reported through to West Midlands Police.
Thank you for that, Mr. Thomas. So the control box, the computer that recorded all of, or should have recorded all of the video data, is located exactly where on the premises?
It's located in the basement in the manager's office, sir, and in respect of the operation at that time, the security staff had access to that part of our premises. We had wrongly, we now in hindsight, but we had trust in those individuals who had all the appropriate qualifications and ostensibly experience to perform a good job, and clearly they failed us woefully.
So not only have we not employed a exceptionally good security business, we've also got one that has allowed its staff to tamper with the CCTV system. Is that what we're saying?
We don't know that, sir, and as I said to you, we can only assume that. We most definitely know that we had a security company that outwardly showed it had the experience, demonstrated it had security industry authority licenses in place, who then we can see from the police CCTV footage clearly demonstrate that they have willfully concealed a serious criminal offence from the operator and indeed from West Midlands Police.
Okay, and in addition, they actually gained access into the kitchen area, which is supposedly a secure area, by punching in whatever the code is from the reception area. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. They had access. They were provided. There was no reason not to provide them access, and there was nothing that would outwardly suggest that they could behave in the manner that they did.
I think I'd better finish there, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Leddy. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Are there any further questions?
Sorry about me camera, Chair. It decided to throw a wobbly.
Okay, we're all right now. There's no further questions from myself. So we'll move on now. So is
Chair, before we move on, can I come back and talk with the representative from More Security and ask? More Security have been around a few years. I have heard of them. Is it custom and practice that a security operation like that have access all areas, including the manager's office?
Good morning, everyone. Not everyone would have access to all areas. Maybe the head doorman would have access to all areas, but the other security guards would not have access like to a locked kitchen or management office. If it's agreed between management and the head doorman, then yeah, but only that individual.
Thank you very much for that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Leddy, and thank you, Mr. Thomas. So is that all of the submissions the representatives wish to make on behalf of the licence holder?
Yes, ma'am.
And now, does West Midlands Police wish to make a closing submission?
Yes, please. Thank you, Ma'am. Obviously, you've heard now of a catalogue of failings on behalf of Mr. Deco. A small thing, the wearing of yellow jackets, you've seen on the CCTV footage. At least 2 security guards, neither of them were wearing yellow jackets. That is part of the conditions of Mr. Deco's licence. He hasn't challenged those people on that night. He was exercising a lack of control of those people. These failings have led to things getting out of hand. And let me say to you that it's no excuse to say, I wasn't aware of what was happening. If you're the premises licence holder and you're the designated premises supervisor, you have to place yourself in a position where you are in control of all of your operation. Now, I talked about threat before, and you have different phases to this operation. So when the premises opens, your main threat's going to be outside because that's where the people are queuing up to come in. That trend transfers into the premises where, during the course of the event, where all your people are inside. And then that then transfers back outside when people are leaving. And you have to be across all of those threats. Now, you could say that one way of doing that, because you can't be in more than one place at once, would be to be viewing that on your CCTV. Your CCTV provides footage of inside your premises and of outside your premises, so you could be across both of the threats to your premise at that particular time. This hasn't been done. Mr. Deco has said to you that he has no experience of managing late night economy venues. None at all. Yet he wishes to be open until 4 o'clock, and he's saying now 3 o'clock. I looked at this from the outset because it's a nasty, horrific attack on 3 innocent men with a weapon from one of our premises in Birmingham. brings no pleasure to anybody. At the end of the day, I looked at this from the outset of this place needs to be dealt with by means of review and having the licence revoked. I have been, though, since impressed by the things that have been put to yourselves and us as ways of moving forward. And I could see ways of moving forward. So those would be that the CCTV, which is key to this, is ensured to be in working order. So prior to any licensable activity, that CCTV should be checked, and it needs to be recorded that it's been checked, the identity of who checks it, the time that they check it, and what they find when they do check it. Is it working or not? That should be recorded in the incident log. I welcome and would be assured by the appointment of another DPS, a new DPS. The reason being that would be another layer in the management of the premises. That would be somebody to help, assist and advise Mr. Adika. And secondly, to take on some of that responsibility and take it away from him. So you can have somebody outside and inside at the same time. I welcome the appointment of More Secure Limited. More Secure Limited, as I've said to you, are an established SIA badge firm who work across the city centre and have done so successfully over a number of years. I would want a further reassurance that, and things can happen and contractual relationships finish, that if that were to be the case and then another set of door staff were to be appointed, that there would be consultation with West Midlands Police as to who the people that were going to take over that role, because we wouldn't want another rhino guard in place. I would welcome a dispersal policy, because these issues have taken place and you've seen the issues. Now, obviously, I thought that that person was part of this incident who has been taken across the road. But this is a third incident then that's taken place where somebody was ill or injured outside those premises on that day. Clearly, this operation cannot cope with the threat, risk and harm at 0400 hours in the morning. And I would request, therefore, that that is taken away from the premises and that those hours are reduced. I do hear what Mr. Thomas says about a last entry time at 2 o'clock and people then leaving at 3 o'clock. I would say this premises has operated successfully till 2 o'clock, and after that time there have been issues. So I would ask for the premises to have its hours reduced to 0200. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Swallow. What are the interim steps that you'd like to see taken?
The removal of Mr. Adiko, so that he, and then the those steps that I've outlined there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Swallow. Okay, so if finally, does the licence holder or their representative wish to make a closing submission, and if they could outline the steps that they'd like to see taken?
Ma'am, thank you very much. Can I just say I'm grateful to West Midlands Police, and I'm grateful to West Midlands Police for being transparent in their submissions to the committee and actually indicating to you how their initial view was one of revocation, but actually how in this engagement that we've had and the evidence that they have heard, their submissions to you as to what they believe West Midlands Police would accept and how these premises can promote the licensing objectives going forward with those changes put in place. And so I thank West Midlands Police for that. And of course, I'm cognizant that this is your decision and not a decision of West Midlands Police. But what I would say is that my client has been open and transparent with the committee and with West Midlands Police. At the time that the licence was granted to him, there was no question mark or questions put to him as to his experience in the industry. And now that this incident has arisen, he recognises that he would benefit from an experienced designated premises supervisor in place. And that's why it's openly volunteered to the committee and to West Midlands Police as a way forward. In terms of Rhino security, there is no public review or comment available for anyone wishing to instruct them to indicate the risks of so doing. All we have reference to is the Security Industry Authority, who will give their confirmation that somebody is licensed to deliver that activity, and then marketing information that individuals can present. And here, there has been an absolute failing in their support to my client. My client recognises that whilst he has the appropriate training, he lacks experience and could have help with somebody with that experience, so we can bring that on board. In terms of the security provision, you've heard from West Midlands Police, they're not allowed to recommend a security company, but actually I'm grateful that I have an ability to clients to recommend individuals and discuss those that I know and have worked with in the past. And you've heard from West Midlands Police that More Secure are a proven entity in the city and in the nighttime economy. Now, in terms of the proposed conditions of CCTV, that is absolutely volunteered and agreed. In terms of removal of Mr. Adiko as a DPS and appointment of an experienced DPS, again, that is absolutely volunteered and agreed by Mr. Adiko. The appointment of More Secure Limited and the concern expressed by West Midlands Police should that contract end, then we are very willing to agree with West Midlands Police that should there be any change in the door security provider, then no change is to be implemented without first reference to West Midlands Police. And that means there is always transparency and dialogue that will go on between the operator and West Midlands Police regarding the provision of security. Those other aspects are sensible matters that we've already put forward, and West Midlands Police have hinted on a dispersal policy, which we absolutely agree with. And again, we would invite the committee, if they're with both the applicant and West Midlands Police on that, that be imposed as a condition of the licence. In terms of the terminal hour, then, if the committee are minded to follow the representations, we are, of course, subject to your decision-making powers. You heard from the officer that actually up until 2 a.m. there's no evidence that the premises didn't meet the licensing objectives or perform well. In reality, there's no evidence until 4 a.m. if we look at the actual evidence that's there in terms of what we've actually seen. And my client has put forward what he considers to be a compromise position of a 2 a.m. last entry, 3 a.m. close at weekends. I appreciate, my clients appreciate, this is a decision that the licensing committee will make when it retires to consider this decision. What I would be saying in summing up, that in terms of the evidence that you've heard, both in terms of evidence and submissions on behalf of the premises licence holder and from West Midlands Police, the submissions to you are to modify the conditions of the premises licence, to remove the designated premises supervisor, and to put in place those conditions that have been aired and discussed openly before you. And all parties, and by which I mean the applicant in terms of West Midlands Police and me on behalf of the premises supervisor, put that to you as a committee, and I invite you to follow those submissions that you've heard this morning. And unless I can assist you any further, then that is the closing remarks for the applicant, for the premises licence holder.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas, and thank you, everyone. I will now ask all parties to leave the Teams meeting, and the members, the committee lawyer, committee manager will go into private session while the subcommittee makes its decision. You'll be notified of the decision of the subcommittee before the end of statutory time limit being Wednesday, the 25th of August, 2021. Thank you, everyone.